Let's check out today's conversation. To finish season 2 strong, Mike sits down with the Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence. We get to witness how he crafted the mindset of a world record-breaking Ironman athlete, beginning with his very first endurance challenge.
They wanted 10 riders to ride the Ferris wheel for all 10 days of the Stampede. And I quickly recognized that this wasn't a physical challenge, it was a mindset grind.
To being blindsided by the 2008 financial crisis.
They just took my home away. We've gone through all of our savings trying to save this thing, and we literally have nothing.
To forging the grit he needed to do the impossible.
And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you go, whew, I think I can do 100 consecutive. I know I can.
All of this coming up next on this special edition of the Level Up Lifestyle.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Level Up Lifestyle podcast. I am your host, Mike Sheets. And man, we have such a special, amazing episode on deck for you guys today. If you are listening to us, don't stop. But when you get to wherever it is that you're going, I want you to go check out the YouTube video because you need to see where we're at right now. We are on stage at the Grand Ole Opry, one of country music's most famed venues. And in fact, we are sitting on stage on the circle. This circle right here, they cut it out from the Ryman Auditorium. It's the original stage that so many legendary performers have stood on. And now we're here. And speaking of cowboys, I've got the Iron Cowboy as our special guest, James Lawrence. James, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mike. And I don't think I understood the assignment. I should have brought my wife. She's a huge country fan. So I'm going to have to do something special when I get home to make up for this mistake.
Well, shout out to Sunny right now, right?
Absolutely.
So she knows. So
it's our secret handshake.
Right, exactly. Well, James, thanks so much for being on here today.
100%.
We are at our annual convention for Globe Life Liberty National Division in Nashville, Tennessee. You spoke this morning at our general session. Amazing story. Kind of sharing your journey from where you started to where you are. And the Level Up Lifestyle, a podcast is really about that. You know, we see so many people that are successful today and we don't know where they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. We see the success now, but we don't see the journey. So what I'd like to do is let's get into that journey. Let's hear about how you became who you are and all the legendary things you've accomplished. You're a Guinness Book of World Records 3 times, 3 records that you've achieved, many things, and we'll get into that. So, give me the start. Where are you from? What was your childhood like coming up?
It's so funny when anybody asks me that question. I always go back to the movie Goonies when they capture the kid and they put his hand in the blender and he's like, tell me what happened. And he goes all the way to the beginning.
Yeah.
When I was in 5th grade. It's so funny. But man, I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Okay.
Great family, 3 siblings, all sisters. So I was the only boy.
Okay.
But I grew up in a household where my mom was kind of a dreamer, a homemaker, unbelievable woman.
Yeah.
And then my dad was this like blue-collar firefighter worker and just instilled incredible work values and ethic into us. And so I had a great balance. And then, of course, my grandmother was a big part of my life, too. She immigrated from Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
And came here with no money and didn't know anybody, but just had that tenacity for entrepreneurship and hard work. And she built one of the largest network marketing companies and was the #1 distributor in Canada for 40 years.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And so I got to watch her do that. I'm talking back in the day, knocking on doors, high heels, lipstick, fax machines, like the whole thing. Like she just really got out there and grinded. And so I just had like this wide variety of examples to me. And then for me, I was the only boy and I'm the only one in my family that loves sports.
Okay.
And so I played every sport growing up and was really raised by a loving mother and a hardworking father and then my coaches.
Sure. So coming up in Canada, is hockey the main sport that you gravitated to? Everyone thinks that, or is it
everyone
football, soccer?
Yeah, one of the first questions I get is, man, did you play hockey?
Yeah.
I was a consumer of the sport.
Sure.
I loved it. I'm still holding on to our 1989 cup win by the Flames.
Sure.
I remember the moment exactly. I was 12 years old, sitting in front of my fireplace watching the game. But no, we didn't have any money and my parents weren't into sports. And you got to start early with hockey.
Yeah.
And so I just played everything in school and then really gravitated towards wrestling.
Okay.
and then became a standout wrestler, undefeated my senior year.
Wow.
And that's really when I started to understand visualization and belief and conviction and hard work and sacrifice. Wrestling's one of those unique sports where, man, if you win or you lose, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just like full accountability. And then if you don't like the result, what can you change?
Sure.
What behaviors can you change? You know, team sports, there's always a superstar and then role players. And sometimes that superstar can bail you out of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really found myself in life gravitating towards those individual sports. I love wrestling was first, then golf, and then now triathlon, all solo pursuits.
Yeah.
There's always a team behind you, but like your effort defines who you are ultimately. And so just love individual sports. And then as I kind of navigated life, moved to the States and met my wife. And the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. Well, and so you're probably seeing at an early age the result of having a strong work ethic from your parents and then your grandma, and then applying that into those individual sports. Did it kind of come to a point where you're, okay, I'm achieving success. This is talent and ability, but it's all that extra work that you're putting in behind the scenes. You're learning that at an early age as well as you're going through those sports?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You start to connect the dots in terms of like, oh, my accolades or the success I'm having is a direct correlation to the work I'm putting in. In fact, just the other day, I think I had a dream about it. It was really weird. I was dreaming about my high school wrestling coach.
Yeah.
And I remember a distinct moment when we were all it was a practice. We were all on the mat. We were all going through the drills and whatnot. And part of the team was goofing off and whatnot. And coach like loses his lid, and for some reason he chastised a couple of the like really talented guys, and he pointed right at me and he was like, "This kid's gonna make it." And I was looking at me going like, "I'm the least talented one in the room."
Yeah.
And he goes, "It's because he's doing the drills. He's putting in the work." And that impacted me in such a big way.
Sure.
That he recognized like, okay, you're not the most talented kid in the room, but you're going to make it because of the work and the effort that you put in. And that really has stuck with me throughout my career. It's like, okay, I understand. I don't have a lot of these physical gifts that some people have when, you look around and that kid's just a gifted athlete.
Sure.
That kid has talent. And there's times when sometimes the hard work that you put in trumps that talent.
Yeah.
Now the guys at the highest level, they've got the talent, and then they figured out how to work.
Right.
Too, right?
Right.
They figured out, I got both.
Well, it's a lot of times it's having that raw natural ability, but then having the things that you can't measure, like the heart or emotional intelligence,
For sure.
to know I've got to grind now when no one's looking because I want to compete at that level. Yeah. It's when no one's watching, and that's hard sometimes if people are naturally gifted. You always see people that are naturally gifted that are successful in things, but sometimes it's coming so easy to me. I think there's something to be said about having to work for it a little bit and to really honor that process.
Yeah, one of the biggest kind of like eye-openers to me and a lesson that I got to learn outside of my own experience was I graduated, had an amazing season, went undefeated, won the state championship in Canada, it's provincial championships. Yeah. And there was this newer kid on the team, kind of like a Matt Mop, just got to scrub everybody, but he loved the sport. And he kind of got bullied by some of the other wrestlers on the team. And I came back years later, and I was just said, "Hey, coach, can I help you run a practice and whatnot?" Just kind of wanted to meet the old any of the new guys or whatever. Yeah. And this kid comes out, and I didn't recognize him, and just throttles me.
Wow.
And he said, "Hey man, what's your name?" And he told me his name, and it was that kid.
Wow.
And he ended up going to win the national championships, not provincial championships, the national championships, and then won the most outstanding award.
It's amazing.
And I would have 100% said that kid amounts to nothing.
Yeah.
He was a perfect example of, I have very little talent, but I have a ton of passion, and I want to work.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind.
That's great.
Yeah, really
That's
cool.
great. So many success stories find that parallel. So, all right, let's talk about you a little bit more then. So you're in Canada, and I think at one point, kind of this idea of endurance kicked off with the Calgary Stampede, right? With the with the Ferris wheel. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We never know when a moment in our lives is either a great decision or a bad decision.
Sure.
Sometimes the great decisions turn into bad ones, and the bad ones turn into great ones.
Yeah.
This was one of those bad decisions that turned into kind of an amazing pivot point in my life. I was kind of in a dead-end job and just like any 20-year-old, trying to figure out life. And I got to go to the Calgary Stampede, which is one of the largest rodeos in the entire world. It's 10 days long, city shuts down, huge party. And they announced this contest. They wanted 10 riders to ride the Ferris wheel, the giant Ferris wheel, for all 10 days of the Stampede. And so I was like, man, I think I can do that.
Yeah.
And I quickly recognized that this wasn't a physical challenge. It was a mindset grind.
Yeah.
Their objective was complete boredom. Couldn't bring anything on the ride.
No magazines.
No magazines. No
pillow,
books,
blanket, anything.
No, nothing. Yeah. Couldn't fall asleep from 8 a.m. to midnight.
Okay.
Had to stay awake. You had 2 10-minute breaks a day to go to the bathroom and eat food. So you really had to manage that time. How much do I drink in those 10 minutes? How much do I eat? All these things. And so I was, shocked when I saw people quitting 2-3 days in. Some people quit on the first day. Huh. And it wasn't until years later that I had done more of a deep dive into mindset that they were losing the conversation they were having with themselves. They were flat out quitting because they weren't comfortable just in that silence, in a boredom state. Yeah. And I ended up sitting on the Ferris wheel for 10 days, won the contest, got fired from my job, which was an amazing blessing. Yeah. Because I had one friend in Utah. Okay. That I'd met on a church mission, and I came to Utah to visit him, and ultimately loved the area. Yeah. I was big into golf at the time, and the great golf season, really affordable. Yeah. Ended up staying and met my wife. Okay. And 23 years later, we're still happily married, and we've got 5 kids. And so it was one of those pivot points in my life that I look back and go, man, had I not done that stupid thing, who would I be and where would I be? Right? It's one of those kind of pivot points. Right. Who would have thought a Ferris wheel could jumpstart your entire life? Exactly. Change your life. Yeah. So you came down to Utah and you start a life and get married, and then what's happening at this point? Are you into marathons or triathlons at this point? Or are you just kind of, is it a hobby? No, not even a hobby yet, nothing. Okay. So you go from, super high level competitive wrestling. Yeah. And then you kind of get into young adulthood and you're like, there's no competitive outlet. Yeah. And I was really competitive as a kid and loved sports. And so just was, just a typical gym goer at that point. I was in shape and maintained a good fitness level, but it wasn't into running, didn't own a bike, certainly didn't know how to swim. And I was big into golf. And I just knew, okay, if I put in the time, my dream was to go on the professional tour. Okay. And so I got my first job in the States was at a golf course. Okay. And I was just like welcoming people and working in the golf shop. And cleaning clubs for $5. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep, trying to get $5 at a time, a couple bucks at a time. And got to the point where I was a 4 handicap, and there's something that's called the PAT, Player Ability Test, and it's to be a head pro at the courses. Okay. And I missed it by 1 stroke twice. Wow. And by that point, I'd been married, 2 little girls at this point, and $7.50 an hour just wasn't cutting it. And I've always been an entrepreneur. And at the time, my father-in-law was a commercial real estate developer. Okay. And then I had 3 sister-in-laws that were agents. And I was like, man, there's a gap here and an opportunity to become a mortgage broker. And complete the cycle of the family business. Yeah, I got automatic referrals coming in. Sure. Because, building that kind of business is competitive, super hard, takes time. That's true. Yeah. And for me, it was like, okay, if I do this instance, I'm like, all my entrepreneur, things are firing off. So I became that. I found a gentleman who was a broker. We joined, we started a brokerage, and things were going amazing. And this is about what time? About 2006. Okay. Yeah, 2006, and so now we're at 3rd little daughter. Yeah. And life is great. Life is great, and about that same time, my wife says, "Hey, let's go do the Thanksgiving local 4-mile fun run." And I was like, "Great, I love you. I'm going to say yes. We're going to go run 4 miles together on Thanksgiving morning." So I go and we do the whole thing. We get our numbers and we go run this 4 miles. Yeah. And humbly, it wrecked me. Wow. We joke now, but I remember I look over and there's these moms pushing their kids in strollers, passing me. Yeah. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm a champion wrestler. I'm in the peak of my athletic body. And so it's just it was this real humbling moment that maybe I was physically fit on the outside, but then there was some maybe heart, lungs, and things that I wasn't.
Yeah, the cardio level. Yeah.
And as you know, you get outside of, you get busy with a normal life and chasing the dream, and you get kids, and now you got a mortgage, and all these things is happening. Well, your physical priorities maybe slip.
Yeah. So getting beat by a mom and a toddler was the wake up call.
Yeah, that was a good wake up call for me. And then that evening at Thanksgiving dinner, my wife lovingly says, "Hey, James, you're pathetic." That entire performance was pathetic. The way you're acting right now was pathetic. And then she delivered to me some news. And she said, "I just signed you up for the Salt Lake City Marathon. It's in 4 months. Figure it out."
Okay.
And I was like, okay.
Figure it out.
We're doing this thing. Let's figure it out. And so long story short, I train, I do the marathon, hated every step of it, but then had a good friend who introduced me to, it was Lance Armstrong's peak.
Okay.
And he was like, "Hey, come to the house and watch the final day of the Tour de France." And I'm like, "Don't know what that is, but awesome. Let's go." And go watch the Tour de France. And he goes, "Hey, we do this thing called triathlon. Do you want to do that with us?" And I was like, "Great. What's a triathlon?" It tells me the whole thing, what it is. And we had this little side bet that I couldn't beat his time from last year at a specific race. Yeah. And I just line, hook, and sinker.
Yeah.
I'm in, man. I was hooked. I did my first little sprint triathlon and just loved it. I loved the complexity of the swim, bike, the run, the mindset piece of it, the nutrition, the strength, the community, just loved it all. And so my wife and I started triathlon and endurance sports together. And it all started with a pathetic 4-mile fun run.
It's interesting how that worked for you though, because it was 4 miles that you didn't enjoy. And it was pointed out to you that you didn't do very well with it. So where does the desire to now I'm going to take that and multiply it and run a marathon and then not enjoy the marathon and say, now all of a sudden
the marathon wasn't my choice.
Okay, well, you had to, because you had to do the marathon, right?
The marathon.
But is that the internal just, I want to overcome my own mind, that endurance kind of mindset that you have that motivates you to do that? Because a lot of people are going to say, "Hey, I did it. Great. I'm not doing that again." Where does that desire to continue come from?
Yeah, well, I really fell in love with cycling.
Okay.
I was learning how to swim and I was really enjoying it. And again, the community is what brought you in.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I joked on social media the other day and I said, this may come as a shock to all of you. I hate running. I despise running. In fact, I've built my career off of running. And sometimes in life, you have to do some of the things you don't love to get the results that you want.
Yeah.
And so for me, I still don't like running today.
Yeah.
It's not enjoyable. It's hard on my body. I think I've been lied to my entire endurance career that there's this runner's high of some kind out there. I'm still like in search.
Where is it?
Where's this runner's high everybody's talking about? But I loved, I still to this day love cycling. I've got a bunch of cycling races this year. I've really gravitated towards that. But it was more the challenge.
Yeah.
And it was that feeling when you cross the finish line. Everybody, especially with like longer endurance stuff, everybody retires in the middle of a race. I'm never doing this again. And then you go, you cross the finish line, you have that unbelievable feeling. The next day, you find yourself online searching for the next stupid endurance thing that you're going to do.
Yeah.
And I think I love the training. I love the community. I love the pain part. For some reason, it just gives me satisfaction, and I just grow from it. I learn. There's just so many gifts and life lessons from endurance racing.
Sure. So much in the mind. And I think you bring up a good point where you say, what keeps people from living the life that they want to live oftentimes is a willingness or unwillingness to do the things that they really don't want to do.
100%.
And you live it there in the Ironman.
Well, I think you live it there with anything. You get into a marriage, you get into a job, you get into anything that was exciting at the beginning, and there's going to be those lulls or seriously, a superpower is being able to do the monotonous things over and over again. If you can learn how to enjoy the monotony of certain things, dude, you will be successful at anything. In fact, one of the things I love to talk about, we run a mastermind online, but one of our key principles is every day is day one. Every day is day one, because just think back to the first time you met your wife, or the first day on the job. Or all of these things, you were so excited and you gave it 500%.
Sure.
And then as we get into a routine and it becomes the new normal or the new baseline, or challenges arise, it becomes a lot more difficult. Man, we stop giving that effort, and if we start becoming disgruntled and all the, and it really affects everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
And so I try every single day, man. Today's day one.
Yeah.
And if I can show up every day with that type of attitude and the way I approach things, it not only impacts the results that I get, but it impacts everybody around me. And think about this for a second. So like, let's think of the other side of that coin, whether it's day one or the last day. If you knew it was your last day with your spouse, how different?
Be very deliberate.
How different would you treat them?
Sure.
Right? And also think of it the first day you met your spouse.
Sure.
How excited you were, and then what are the things that you did?
Yeah.
And so I always try to think, okay, it's day one, and man, is it my last day? Right? If you can have that perspective on both ends of the spectrum, I think it changes everything in how we show up, how we interact, how we treat.
Yeah.
Right? How we experience things, how we experience food,
right?
How we experience every single moment, good or bad, right?
You live in the moment. You live in the moment.
It's the greatest gift that it's so hard to do, but man.
But putting that perspective on it, that if it was your last day, it almost makes you stop and reflect, okay, how do I live in this moment? Yeah. Because we get so tied into the day-to-day. We don't have time for things. You don't have time for physical fitness. I don't have time to eat properly. I don't have time to spend with my kids because I'm so busy, but you got to find out you do have the time. It's just the prioritization. Where are you spending that time?
100%.
Yeah. So, okay, so back into this journey here. It's about 2006, and life is good. How's the business doing at this time?
Business is killing it, man. That 04 to 08 kind of time period, man, loans were easy. They were giving money away. I mean, it was just like you had a pulse, and they'd give you a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
So it was easy. Life was great. We were getting into investing and buying multiple homes and doing rental properties. Just book a business, just super easy. Kids are growing, getting into the sport of triathlon, still enjoying golf. I mean, just so much excitement. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship at its highest, great marriage, great kids, just really living life adventure. So just on cloud nine, really.
Yeah, everything's good. And then
everything's easy.
And then 2008 here, and you don't know. So again, here's something, an obstacle that you didn't even know was coming.
Yeah, I think that's what all life is.
Sure.
Obstacles that you don't know are coming. But yeah, you literally, things are great. And that crisis was so overnight. I mean, it was like the pandemic again, right?
Absolutely.
But that 08 economic crisis was like, boom, immediate, overnight, normal one day wake up. The world, the United States is different. And then there was the ripple effect to the world. But I mean, it impacted everybody. But man, it was my industry. It rocked us. And so we, and it escalated minute to minute. This loan's okay.
Now,
at closing, guidelines changed off. Bank closes, done. I mean, it was just such a ripple effect, and it happened so fast. And
what are you thinking as this is happening right now? Because this is your entire life, everything built in. This
everything you built in, and you just try not to panic. You try not to get ahead of yourself. You try to control what you can, but things are just happening so fast. And you truly don't understand it. In fact, I fully didn't understand what was happening till years later when I watched the Big Short, the movie. I was like, that's what happened? Because you really don't know, because there's levels of complexities behind all of this, and you don't have information. And,
Sure.
As a mortgage broker, you're really a middleman between the banks and the lenders.
Yeah.
And that's what you are. And so, man, it just, overnight, our world just fell on top of us. And then we tried to hold on, and everybody's like running to the bank and filing bankruptcy, and my wife and I are like, no, we can figure this out. We're going to weather the storm. Yeah. We're not going to just take the quick bailout, and everybody just handled that situation differently, not right or wrong.
Did you feel out of control in a way, that there were things that were happening that you couldn't influence?
Yeah, I mean, there's always things that are happening out of our control, and I think that's one of talking about gifts, I think that's one of the gifts I have, is I've just really developed this early on ability to only focus on what I can control and not allow my mind to really get ahead of myself into situations that I don't have control. I talked about on stage today, because one of my favorite words is catastrophizing.
Yeah. And
that's the act of thinking in the future, worst case scenario, and then going there, living there, and literally spiraling.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it's it's removing your ability to be present.
Yeah.
It's removing your ability to act now and control what you can that's right in front of you that's actually going to help and move the needle.
Right.
And so when that was all happening, my wife and I were just like, okay, what can we control?
Did you have that skill, or did it develop in this, or did it fortify in this
I think that accelerated it for sure. You know, we realized it at a small level, but that accelerated it. And man, I'm telling you, you remember the moment they knock on your door and take away your home.
Wow.
You know, because as you know, I had 4 little ones at that point, almost a 5th on the way, and you know, as a male, at least for me, I want to be a provider.
You're the leader.
I'm the leader, and I want to be a provider, and I didn't have control of what was happening, and then just that moment when you're just like, they just took my home away, and we've gone through all of our savings trying to save this thing, and we literally have nothing, and now what? Because it's truly on me to figure this out. And what was really special is situations like that do 2 things. They either just like divide you, and it's the beginning of the end, or it brings you closer together. And for my wife and I, it really strengthened us, because she was like, you know, we kind of linked arms in that moment and said, okay, we have a clean slate. What do we want to do? What do we want to build? And just know we're doing it together.
Yeah.
And that was just so powerful, knowing I had her support, and I was going to do everything I could to fulfill her dream of being a mom, a stay-at-home mom. And it was just so great to have that unity. And you know, there's the saying of burn the ships, right? And if you do that, it's going to make you more effective in whatever you're trying to pursue. And I've never really bought into that, because I'm like, my rule number 1 is don't quit your day job while you're building your dream, because you got to take care of your needs and your basic needs. And the ships got burnt for us. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, we don't even have a ship. Yeah. And so what do we want to build? And that's when this whole thing came about, because I was right in the peak of like really discovering the Ironman distance and racing and what I could do. And I'd started my a new coaching business in terms of like coaching local athletes and whatnot. And so I was like, what can I do to separate myself from competition? I've always got this entrepreneurial mind. What can I do to separate myself from competition? Michael, what's the world record for X, Y, and Z? And then I started going down that rabbit hole, and we set on breaking the world record for the most half Ironmans in a year, which led to the world record for the most full Ironmans in a year. And it was never to become who I am today. It was to build my coaching business as an entrepreneur, so I could provide for my family. Right. And we had no idea where it would ultimately end up taking us to change all of our lives in terms of a speaking career. We're releasing our 2nd book. We're the subject of 2 documentaries on Netflix and Amazon Prime. We could have, I've spoken in 50 countries around the world. Wow. And again, it's just like the Ferris wheel. You have no idea when something's good or if something's bad. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And the Ferris wheel, stupid decision, best decision of my life. The 2008 economic crash, terrible situation, unbelievable turn of events in my life. The pandemic, another massive pivot point and opportunity in my life. So all of these tragic or obscure opportunities, we've turned them into like very pivotal, like impactful moments in our life.
A lot of those adverse moments have brought you success in a way.
All of them, for sure. We've turned them into just total change in trajectory. All unexpected. I think that's also an issue that a lot of people have, is they're so like rigid and set on where they're trying to get to and how they're going to get there. Yeah. That ultimately that screws them up. Yeah. And in anything, especially in life, dude, we don't know. Again, we don't know what's good and what's bad as it's happening to us. We have our opinions on it, but we have to be open to the ebbs and the flows, the ups and the downs, the peaks and the valleys as it's happening, opening some doors as others close, peaking in some doors, charging through others. But I think it's a huge mistake for a lot of people that they just get, this is where I'm headed and this is how I'm getting there. It's okay that this is where you're headed. It's the how. Yeah. Right? You have to be open to pivoting because on any journey, when I started all of these big campaigns, when I started it, I didn't know the people I needed to know to get to where I needed to be. I was going to meet them along the way. But if I was dead set on how to get there, I miss meeting those people that ultimately got there, and I would have failed along the way.
Sure. And do you think that's maybe where sometimes the difference in that being successful or having a victim mindset can even come in a way? Because if you think about it, I mean, it really is a remarkable story. Just here, where 2008, you've built this enormous family business, very successful, probably living in your dream home. Mm-hmm. You've got 4 kids at the time.
We had just built our dream home. That's the one they took away from us.
Just built it, right? Yeah. Everything the way
we just moved in.
Everywhere you wanted it to be, and then there's decisions that are completely outside of your control that have created a chain of events that has now stripped your entire life away as you wanted to live. And so many people in that moment could say, this has harmed me. I've been wronged, and dwell in that moment. And instead, you've taken where you think, hey, maybe this is the path. I'm going to be a mortgage broker and retire and live a nice life. And, there's nothing wrong with that as a direction. And now here you are as this, international superstar, 3 Guinness Book World Record holder with your own business and coaching. And that difference between being the victim or letting it, eventually cause you to be the victor.
Being the victor. There's still people today that are using the 2008 crisis as an excuse for where they are in their lives. And
there are,
still today. And I could show you 4 or 5 different examples of different individuals in my life in different areas of my life that at the exact same time, in the exact same moment, we were standing beside each other, shoulder to shoulder, same opportunity. And then decisions we made or a mindset that we developed, either the victor or the victim, we've gone completely different paths. And I choose to look at every situation, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. Where's the opportunity? And I know that sounds cliche and I'm the eternal optimist. No, we get to choose every single moment how we look at it. And sometimes we need a moment to process the bad and feel the emotions, maybe cry and throw a tantrum for 2 minutes, and whatever it takes. But as long as we get back up and then go, okay, all right, that happened. I couldn't control that. What can I control? And what can I now create? I think if we adopted more of a creator mode, than that victim or woe is me mode, I don't think I know the world would be a very different place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so much in that mindset of, you had a quote today where your problems aren't always your problems, it's how you react to your problems, which are your problems, right? To paraphrase that, which is, I just think it's critical.
It's a reaction to adversity, not adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop.
Yeah.
And I believe that. There's the saying, 10% of life is what happens to you, 90% is how you choose to react to it. I think it's 99% is how you choose to react to it.
Yeah.
The more experience I get, the little bit older I get, the more wisdom I try to accumulate. That number just gets higher and higher.
Yeah.
We are in control of our thoughts and our actions, and hopefully our emotions.
Acknowledge the emotion, the feeling in a negative time, but then know that you have a choice. And how this impacts you.
100%.
So here you are at this crossroads in your life to say, right, where it's, okay, now what do we do? I'm sure you rode through some emotions there and you make that decision, hey, we're gonna build this business. And so how do we get to the point to where we are today now in this endurance athlete?
Yeah, I think it's letting go of control.
Okay.
And not really knowing where the final destination is, just always striving for a little bit more. A mentor of mine, Ed Milet, says, the goal of life is to kind of chase down the ultimate version of who you are.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me, but I also struggled with that because the ultimate version or the best version of myself is subjective. And it's based off of where I'm sitting right now in my journey. And then I quickly realized I'm never going to catch him because that ultimate version is continually evolving as I change and grow.
Sure.
So now the goal is be in constant pursuit of that individual and being okay with the fact that I'm never going to catch him, but see how close I can get.
Yeah.
Right? And how great can I be when it's all said and done? And so I know I'm never going to catch what in my mind the ultimate version is because hopefully I keep showing up in my life to where I keep evolving, expanding, growing, changing as I'm in pursuit of that ultimate version.
Yeah, it's almost setting goals for yourself that you as the person you are today couldn't achieve. You have to evolve into somebody different, and then as you evolve, continuing to move that ball.
Yes, and to answer the question, how did we go from a 4-mile fun run to here? Is I just keep chasing potential, and one of the things I said from stage today as well was you can't see the next challenge until you're ready for it. And I see an entire generation sitting at home waiting for their purpose and passion to knock on their door.
It'll never knock.
It's never knocking.
Yeah.
That is never coming to slap you across the face. And the only way to do it, number one question I get around the world is, how do I become more mentally tough? It's through showing up, having experiences, and then doing those things, participating in life. I didn't know I loved wrestling until I wrestled. I didn't know I loved golf till I golfed. I didn't know I loved triathlon until I participated in triathlon. I didn't know I loved my wife till I met her. I didn't know I loved my kids till I had them.
Sure.
Like, you just don't know, and it's never coming. It's you're not going to find it by scrolling. You're not going to find it by watching. You're not going to find it by listening to us. Hopefully you gain some inspiration that now empowers you to go do something and have an experience. And so that's how we've got to this point.
Yeah.
When I did my first Ironman, I was like, holy hell. Never again. And then I'm like, okay, when's the next one? And then you get the belief, okay, I did that, can I do it better? Can I do it faster? And then I'm like, okay, can I do 2 in a row? Okay, what? And then you start, the belief system changes. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you go, whew, I think I can do 100 consecutive. I know I can, but what does it look like? Right? What's that going to look and feel like? What's the sacrifice it's going to take to do it?
Yeah.
Right? Everybody asks me, could you do 200? Yeah, I could. I don't want to. Because in every situation, you have to ask yourself 2 questions. What's it going to take? What's the sacrifice going to be to accomplish that goal? And what's the uptick and benefit to myself, my family, my community?
Right.
If I can't make those 2 things align, I'm not doing it.
Sure.
Right? And I do that with every single situation or opportunity. Okay, what do I think the sacrifice is going to be? And then what's the value add that's going to come from it? And there doesn't always have to be value, but on like really big things, like where it's going to take massive sacrifice, I got to ask myself those questions. And then always, you do the thing and you're like, I would have never done that had I really known what the sacrifice would have been.
Right.
But in those moments, it's always worth it.
Yeah. Well, and I've always thought that a lot of times people have this mental equation that they go through in their mind, or a process that they think about when they're confronted with adversity or a challenge or an opportunity, even, where what do I have to go through to get what it is that I want? And kind of, where's the pain? Would it be more painful having to go through that and what I get really isn't worth it? Or is it more painful to not have what I want than it is what I need to go through? And a lot of times it's that vision.
I think most people realize what it's going to take and they're like, that ain't worth it.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I coach athletes and they're like, I want to do an Ironman. And then I'm like, okay. I lay out the whole plan for them and they do the first week of training and they're like, I don't want to do an Ironman.
Yeah.
You quickly realize who are the ones that are willing to put in the sacrifice and do it, and who don't. And then I also truly believe there's a little bit of like naivety is bliss thing.
Not knowing what it really is.
I think sometimes we don't get to know or shouldn't know really what it's going to take.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee we wouldn't have done. I look at the 50, no chance I'd do it. Like from the other side of it going, that's what it's going to, I'm out. Same with the 100 too, like the pain and everything that we went through and the difficulties and challenges, like there's no way. So I think a little bit of naivety going into something is just a gift. Actually.
I think
do it. So you gotta have the intelligence to weigh the pros and the cons.
Right.
The upswings. But then I think some of that naivety is also a good thing.
But I think sometimes what separates the great is having that value or belief vision of this is what I want for whatever, for this stage of my life, for my career, for my athletic journey. This is my vision of what I want. Mm-hmm. And if that vision's greater than your obstacles don't slow you down. It's when that obstacle becomes the obstacle almost blocks out the view of the vision. That's where you say, hey, thanks, but no thanks.
I'm building an interesting part of our business right now that it's very foreign to me, where we're building an online mastermind and some coaching and programming and this massive fitness online space. And man, I'm getting wrecked in terms of like the marketing and figuring out social, like all of it. It is such an incredible challenge. And I get it. I understand why people quit.
Yeah.
It is so hard. It is so frustrating. It's so whatever it is. Like you get to that point where you're like, dude, this can't be worth it. And so a thing that I'm really learning and I'm implementing it right now in my life is I'm like, okay, what can I control today? I know the dream. I've got it.
Yeah.
Man, it is so clear in my mind what I'm trying to create and do and who and how we want to help and all these things. But it just gets overwhelming at moments. And when you start stacking a lot of losses on top of each other, it's hard to wake up every day going, man, I'm so excited to lose today.
Yeah, can't wait to get kicked.
Can't wait to get kicked in the face again. But I've just really started to develop this gift where I'm like, okay, I got 800 things on my list. What are the top 3?
Yeah.
What are the top 3 today? What's the most one that doesn't scare me? I'm going to do that one today. Yeah. And just understand that, like, I'm just going to slowly chip away at this. In fact, I did this really cool race. I had an opportunity to race in Fiji.
Wow.
It was a Mark Burnett production. Bear Grylls was the host.
Okay.
63 teams from 50 countries or whatever it was represented. Map and compass navigation, 8-9 days, way outside of our skill set.
Yeah.
We were invited to do the race. Anyways, it was in Fiji, so the Fijian teams were given a spot in the race. And no training, no coaching, terrible equipment, the laughing stock of this event. It was like really big. It was actually the largest film production in TV history.
Oh, wow.
1,000 cameramen throughout the Fiji jungle. No way these Fijians were going to finish. And man, they just showed up every single day, and they kept chipping away at the task. And they were gritty out of necessity because of the way that they grew up.
Sure.
And it wasn't pretty, but they just brilliant attitudes, always happy, and just again chipping away. And guess who they beat? Every team that quit.
Yeah.
And guess who finished the race?
They did.
Those dang Fijians.
Yeah.
Because they just understood, man, it's not going to be pretty, but if I keep showing up, keep chipping away at it, I'm going to get this task done. And I can only control what's right in front of me. So they were gritty out of necessity, and they just understood time versus movement.
Yeah.
If I keep moving and I don't pull myself out, I win. And to them, winning was clearing the course. They cleared the course. It was unbelievable. We were there to greet them at the finish line. It was a really cool moment. And we just celebrated that level of grittiness, commitment, and understanding, like, we don't quit.
Just keep showing up.
We just keep showing up.
Show up every day.
It was just a really impressive performance by me. It's on Amazon Prime, 10 episodes. You can check it out.
All right,
cool.
Yeah, a little plug there. I've definitely checked that out. So when you get to the point where the idea for the 50-50 comes in, talk about, so you wanted to raise some money for charity. You want to, establish yourself maybe a little bit in this. And how does that happen? How do you think logistically this works? And walk through that process just a little bit.
Yeah, man. Again, I didn't realize how big of an undertaking it was logistically. Like I don't think the physical accomplishment of the 50 is the most impressive piece. It was logistics.
Yeah.
Like, event planning, a 2-day event with a massive staff is very hard to do.
Sure.
We put on 50 consecutive events in 50 days in 50 different states with people we didn't know.
Right.
That was a new staff every single day, and they were volunteers from the state. It took me over 2 years to plan the 50. And when you're at the beginning stages of anything, dude, you're going to battle with a nuclear power with a stick.
Right.
Right? Because you're by yourself.
Yeah.
It's different when you're a superpower and now you're going to battle. It's a lot easier. But in the early days of entrepreneurship and life and growing and gaining experience, man, it's you with a stick trying to fight everybody. So I was wearing the fundraising hat. I was wearing the web design hat. I was wearing the course design hat. You're
doing it all.
I was doing it all. My wife's amazing. She was like, ooh, I love you and I trust you, but I need a backup plan. And so she, with 5 little kids, ages 6 to 12, me running our coaching business and figuring out the 50, she goes, I need to get my psychology degree. And so she graduated 1 week before we left on the 50.
Wow.
So here's even the most crazier part. She wasn't involved in any of the planning for the 50 over those 2 years. And at the time we were evicted from our house, and we moved in with a lady who had Alzheimer's to care for her in exchange for rent and utilities so that we could pay for this dream.
Yeah.
Right? And so all the sacrifices that you're making, right? You talk about the stuff behind the scenes that nobody knows about.
Right.
And so the campaign starts after 2 years of planning and logistics and all this stuff. And our manager basically goes AWOL in the first week. And Sonny recognizes and realizes, this is my dream too. This is our future. This is our family. This is how we get our life back, by accomplishing this goal. We didn't know how, but we knew it would change our lives. And so literally 5 days into this, she goes, I got to figure this out. So she becomes campaign manager and saves the thing. Cause I'm now not in a state.
Yeah.
So I can, put a sentence together, do a 2 + 2 math equation, right? I'm starting to get delirious and exhausted. We averaged 4 hours of sleep a night.
That's crazy.
During this campaign, I'm doing 140 miles a day, logistic driving, just so many things. And so logistically, this thing was just the behind the scenes on it, and Sonny's role was incredible. In fact, our second book is coming out. It's called Iron Hope. It's about the 100 and everything we've learned. But I want to write a third book called Try the Other Side.
Yeah.
And it's going to be from her perspective.
Oh.
And the same journey, but from a very different angle. And from the support role person and the person who has to watch the person going through what they're going through, and then make sure that everything is all the stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes that might be even the more challenging position to be in.
Well, that's what I say. And I mean, if you take the physical thing that I did, mentally it was more impressive. Logistically, it was more impressive. And what Sonny did was even more.
Yeah.
Like Sonny's at the top of the list of things that made the 50 impressive.
Sure.
Yeah. And nobody knows that part of the story.
And one thing that's really impressive to me that we haven't talked about at all with this is that you lived in an RV with your entire, I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
Living in an RV with 5 kids for 50 days on itself is impressive.
Yeah.
Not to mention.
I didn't have to experience that.
Sure. Because you're out.
I was out competing, and then I was in a different van. We recognized in the first 3 days, me trying to sleep in the back of a Swain motorhome driving, it doesn't work. I wasn't. Yeah. So we kind of tore the seats out of our Ford F-150 van, and I actually slept on the floor of an F-150 van for 50 days, trying to recover for these things. But anybody listening right now, I challenge you to put your 5 kids in an RV, ages 6 to 12, and just go get an ice cream in every state for 50 days consecutively. See how that goes.
You could write a book about that too,
exactly.
right?
For sure.
The soft serve 50 maybe, right? Right.
Yeah.
So, and I just wanted to, before we get too deep into that, there's probably some people from Globe that are listening that don't know what an Ironman is.
Yeah.
So let's just set some context of what an Ironman actually is, so that that you did this in 50 different states for 50 consecutive days is even more impressive.
Yeah, so an Ironman is a brand, and basically the Ironman is a distance of triathlon. So there's sprint, Olympic, half, and full.
Okay.
And Ironman has done a brilliant job of branding the full. So it's actually called the full distance triathlon, but everybody knows it as an Ironman.
Okay.
Because they're brilliant branders. Yeah. So every time the distance doubles, and when you get up to the Ironman distance, it's a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike ride, and then that race finishes with a full marathon run, which is 26.2 miles. So the total distance is 140.6 miles.
All run consecutively. Back to back to back.
Yep, in one day. If you enter a competition, you have from 7 a.m. to midnight, so 17 hours to complete that. NBC Sports calls it the single most difficult day in sports. And so this genius here says, why not do that in 50 consecutive days through all 50 states, and we'll see if that's possible.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. So it ends up being 7,030 miles, no days off, and then throw in the travel between each state. And obviously you got to throw in Alaska and Hawaii in there, which are flights.
Right. And that's almost a full day of just travel time, and you're hitting those at the start.
That was one of the biggest logistic things I had to figure out at the beginning, because I was like, okay, we'll leave Hawaii for last, because that's where the World Championships are. That'd be iconic, cool part of the story. Yeah. But then I'm like, wait, what if a commercial airline, something out of my control, screws up on day 49? I don't want to reset. Yeah. I'm like, okay, if it screws up in the first 2 days, Hawaii and Alaska, I'm okay resetting 2 days, not 48.
Right.
And so, okay, then we flipped it. Okay, we'll start in Hawaii. And then in order to make the flight from from Kauai to Honolulu to Anchorage, I had to start as soon as the clock ticked over to midnight on the first day. So I started at midnight, and that finished mid-afternoon. That allowed me to get on an airplane to get all the way to Alaska. We landed at 5 a.m., and by 6 a.m., bikes being built, I'm in the pool starting, and then finish the one in Alaska, go to Washington. So I had 6.5 hours of sleep through the first 3 days doing 3 Ironmans because of that crazy travel. So by day 4, we're in Oregon, and I'm already nodding off on the bike trying to and you try to find a window to catch up.
Yeah,
there's no catch up. And so because of the logistics, I was behind the 8 ball, like immediately.
Yeah.
And then of course our campaign manager disappears and Sonny's like, I have to figure this out because you're a vegetable. You can't. And so, I mean, literally and that's why the documentary is so cool. It's on Amazon Prime.
I think there's a scene even in the very beginning where you guys are in Hawaii and you get pulled over. And the police are like, hey, you're
on the middle of the road. You can't be here. And I'm like,
you're going to miss your flight already.
I'm like, this is over on day number 1. I'm like, we're screwed. No way I've survived 49 more.
Right. And so you did. Was there ever a moment in that process where you just, I can't, you talk about the battle within, and I'm sure you had that kind of on a micro level, probably every day, or at least an extent of why am I doing this? And then you overcome that. But was there ever a moment where it was really overpowering and you had to push through to get that?
Yeah, it's interesting because we did a lot of media leading up to it. And the interviews always said, hey, what do you think your chances are of finishing? And I'd kind of sit there puzzled and I'm like,
100.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because I was like, no, it's 100. It's 300%.
Yeah.
You can't even have those thoughts when the journey's that big. And by chance, I mean, my wife and I, we chose each other, but by chance we had 2 wingmen with us, Casey and Aaron. I convinced Aaron to quit his job to come join us for the summer. And Casey's a 2nd grade school teacher, so he had summers off and he wanted to earn a little bit extra money.
Okay.
And these 2 boys didn't know each other. They met basically on the 50. And I didn't know them that well either. I coached Aaron, but the 4 of us adapted this mindset really early that no, we are master problem solvers. And the reason the 4 of us were so powerful together is because we didn't catastrophize together. And when one person like needed a minute to cry, to express, whatever, we allowed that to happen, but we had a rule. We said, okay, you have 5 minutes to process, and then we got to get back to work and start solving these problems. And we operated at such a high level between the 4 of us that we've become invincible, in our opinion, because we've adapted that mentality of like, look, we're massive problem solvers. We're not going to shove emotions down everything. Those are important to process and feel and validate that that's happening. But look, we can't start to spiral because that becomes infectious, and that starts to spread to other members of the team. And so we recognized early on, like, we're going to allow one of us at a time to do that because it's important. And then we're going to welcome you back in and say, okay, now let's get back to work together.
And you got 3 other people holding you accountable to that.
And the chances of all moments. 4 of us dumpster firing at the same time wasn't going to happen. And if it did, the project wasn't meant to be.
Sure.
So, and each one of us needed those moments. Whatever it is. But everything changed really on day 30 when we were in Connecticut. I was on day 30. I was completely broken. The entire team was exhausted. And it was that moment that I had a breakdown on the side of the road. And it was the moment that I recognized that I only needed to be perfect for 1 second. And I don't care who you are, what you're dealing with, where you are in your life, you can be perfect for 1 second. And if that's true, let's start stringing multiple seconds together until you can piece together a perfect minute. And then let's expand that to 5 to 15, an hour. Before you know it, you're out of the funk. And now you just had a perfect day.
Great.
And a perfect week. And once I realized that, like, okay, in those moments, I can be perfect for 1 second. Once that mentality was adapted, and it was in that moment too that I let go of control and allowed the team members to do what their jobs were, and I stopped micromanaging, and I focused just on, because I had to focus on that 1 second. And if you take my average times over the last 20 days, they're faster than the previous 30.
That's how important mindset is, because you would think they would be going down.
And so we actually got stronger, and once I focused on the present, the moment that was right in front of me, and let go of everything else that I couldn't control, and allowed my team that I trust in, that I put around me on purpose, to do their jobs. As soon as we started doing that, man, we started to perform at such a high level. And we got better, we got stronger. It became an Ironman a day became routine. And that's crazy to think that happens. But when you put all those pieces in place, when you come into something with the right mindset, that happens. Magic happens.
Then something that someone could say is really challenging and difficult becomes almost fun in a way,
100%.
right? You enjoy it. And how important is living in that second to help minimize mistakes and obstacles? You know, do you take one bad second and let it turn into 2 bad seconds, or you say, hey, that second's over, we're on the next? Yeah. So it compounds both ways.
100%. And the other kind of concept that goes alongside with that one is you can't have 2 bad days in a row.
Yeah.
And to micro that down even a little bit more, don't have 2 bad seconds in a row. And go, okay, that happened. I'm not perfect. We recognize it. None of us are perfect. But to have that ability to go, okay, that happened. I'm not perfect. I can do better this time. Mm-hmm. And just not have 2 in a row. Flip right?
Switch.
And you know, sometimes you may alternate, good, bad, but eventually you start stringing wins together. And that's when momentum and confidence comes into play. And that's really when you start winning, when you start stacking those wins together. Yeah. Now you're changing the way you think too. You're changing how you identify yourself and who you are. And as soon as you start to win, you start to identify yourself as a winner, and that changes everything, and all your perspective changes.
Absolutely. So you complete the 50, and some time goes by, and you do what any person would do after doing that, and says, let's do 100. Right. So, and we've got a movie coming out about the 100, so maybe not to spoil it too much, but where does that come into play? And
yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you know, we just talked about not being perfect. And we make mistakes, and I truly believe that the mistakes that we make, as long as we don't continually repeat them, are a gift. In fact, I think it's the purpose of life is to show up in your life that you're pushing boundaries and limits, that you make mistakes, and then you learn, and hopefully you're wired like me, and you're like, I want to do better.
Yeah,
I can do that better. And so we made some mistakes, and if you want to see those mistakes, go watch the documentary that's on Amazon Prime. It's called The Iron Cowboy. They're very publicly put in there.
Sure.
And I'd always wanted to redo the 50 because I was like, I hate that we did that. I hate that we did that. But when you're doing something for the very first time, when there's 8 billion people on the planet, it comes with criticism and eyeballs and pushing boundaries. Right. Naturally, that's going to happen. But I didn't want to, my kids were a little bit older. I was really focused on my speaking career, my coaching career. And just to displace my family again, it didn't make sense because it was 6 years later when the pandemic hit. And when the pandemic hit, as a speaker, as a coach, as a racer, gone.
That's it.
Like 48 hours, calendar clear.
Yeah.
Like it did for most people. But mine, everything I did was public events.
This is the second time this has really happened to you in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a massive gift again.
Yeah.
For me, thankfully, we were all safe where we were. It was an opportunity for me to slow down, to get back together with my family, just really appreciate those moments. Because I was doing 80 to 100 events a year speaking. I spoke in through 50 countries, and so I was on the road a lot, and I missed my family. And that was my fault, not prioritizing it. But I'm still really close with my family, and when I'm home, I'm home, and when I'm on the road, I'm on the road. I mean, you know that you're a very busy traveling man, but a very successful family man as well. And so I just kept getting the impression you need to do 100. I know it sounds stupid, but I just kept getting this impression.
That voice is talking to you.
The voice is talking to me, and it's my intuition. I've just learned over my career, like, you have to at least pay attention to that. And if it keeps coming up, so I had multiple conversations with my wife, and I was just like, man, I think if we put the same team in place, I think if we removed chaos, removed logistics, if we put systems, I think we could double what everybody said was impossible. I think we could defy logic. And I said, I want to give it a shot. I just want to reset my own history. And she goes, I think you can do it. And we sat down with the wingman, and they were on board. Of course, they're always up for it.
Let's go. Yeah.
They're like, what? Yeah. What do you like?
We've been waiting for this.
They're like, yeah, they're exactly. Yeah. They're like, when are you going to do something stupid again? We're bored. And so they were on board instantly, and I started, calling sponsors and different team members that we would need to make this thing work. And in 4 months' time, we put it together.
Wow.
And it again changed our lives in a completely different trajectory. It allowed me to reset my history. So many things went incredibly right, and then at the exact same time, so many new difficulties and complications. The new book, Iron Hope, is going to be incredible. It's done. It's just in the publisher's hands. Mm-hmm. It's pre-sale right now. It'll come out in January of 2025, and the new documentary is about to hit on the streaming platforms, which I'm so proud of. We actually just won our first award.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
We won what's called the Telly Award, which is a big deal in the documentary industry. And so just a lot of amazing things are happening again from a tragic time in our history as humans. And so I don't know if I'm just lucky or it's what I manifest and think, but through every major tragedy or possibly bad decision, greatness has come from it. And humbly, I'm going to say it's not by accident.
Yeah.
It's because it's a belief system that I've developed over time. It's a skill set that I've really worked hard on. A lot of people say, well, you're just positive by nature. No, I really work on it. It's easy for you to work out. Nope, I hate it when my alarm goes off. Yeah. You're a natural runner. Nope, I hate running still to this day. All of those things. And so I don't think success at any level is by mistake.
Right.
We just don't see the work, the compounding effort. We see headlines.
Yeah.
And we make quick decisions. Oh, yeah, no, he's lucky. Oh, he's gifted.
Must be nice.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
All these things. But I mean, you're not sitting in this chair because it was given to you. You know the hard work and the sacrifice that it took.
Those long, dark, quiet nights by yourself.
Dude, I love the kind of quote. It was a Michael Phelps commercial as he was leading into a recent Olympics where it was a commercial that was kind of all filmed in the dark and him in the pool by himself. And the message behind it was it's the work that's done in the dark when nobody's watching that allows you to perform in the lights
100%.
At the Grand Ole Opry, right?
100%.
It's those moments that people just don't see. And so the question quickly becomes, who are you when nobody's watching? And what are you willing to do when it's the hardest, when you're the most lonely, when you're in your warm, all these things? Who are you really in those moments? I love when Joe Rogan said, live your life like a documentary crew is following you around.
Yeah.
What decisions would you make differently if you knew the camera was rolling at all times?
And everyone knew. And
everybody knew. If it was a live stream broadcast all the time, how different would your life be?
So many people would change a lot of things.
Man.
You would hope, yeah.
Maybe there'd be a few additional dumpster fires that just want you to see how bad it can be.
Right. But I think it's
reality TV.
That is true. That is true. It's true reality TV. But it's almost to where anybody can achieve these wild levels of success that often you think, man, that's just reserved for the lucky people that, they were born to the right family, they knew the right person. The reality is it's all in the mind and everyone's at the same level playing field. If you're willing to put in the time, if you're willing to keep showing up every day, just be good every day. And that's how you become great, is by being good every day.
Win the second, win the minute, win the hour, win the day. If you take care of today, it takes care of tomorrow. All of a sudden you wake up, you've had an unbelievable life. Yeah. I mean, my wrestling coach recognized it. I had no talent, but I showed up. I did the drills. I outworked everybody.
Here you are.
I think I'm living proof of that today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, James, thanks so much for being on the show and sharing your story. Fun, just a lot of great stuff. We got one last thing before you go. Okay. We have a tradition on the Level Up Lifestyle podcast of giving our guests a bobblehead of themselves. So I don't know if we incorporate that. I don't know if in any of the 50s there was like a James Lawrence bobblehead giveaway.
There was not. Yeah. This will be my very first bobblehead. In fact, this is a dream I've wanted to realize for a long time that I didn't know was happening. And so this is actually a really cool moment for me in an unbelievable setting.
Who would have thought you'd get it here on stage at the Grand Ole Opry?
Yeah, it's pretty special.
I'm going to give you your official Level Up Lifestyle bobblehead. Here is the Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence.
It is so freaking fun. I don't know for those of you watching on YouTube, check that out. I mean, it's pretty much an exact replica.
I think so. I think we got it. I think we got it in there.
Right here.
So, if we kind of look at this is a representation of who you are, as we talk about that, all the things that you've done to become the person you are today. If you could go back in time when it's all getting started, I don't know if that moment's in 2009, 2008 financial crisis, if it's when you first just get off the Ferris wheel and head to the States, but in that moment, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, in fact, the advice I'm going to give myself, I don't know that I even would have believed it, because it's that hard to do, and it's enjoy every moment, to be where your feet are planted, as cliche and as much as I hate saying it. You have to forgive yourself for your past, any mistakes that you've ever made. That's a gift. And then you have to stop living in a future that you can't control. Tomorrow, frankly, isn't guaranteed for me or you or anybody here. Yeah. Any of the audience members that were like, you hear those stories where so-and-so passed unexpectedly. Yeah. That could be any one of us. And I look back at a lot of the easier moments in my life and I go, man, I miss the grind. I miss the struggle. I miss the hard work. I miss all of that. And I regret not being present in those moments going, I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
And I actually look at pictures and images when it was like terrible and when we were struggling. And I think, man, I was so happy right there.
Yeah.
In that moment. And so I would tell this guy right here, one, it's all going to work out. You don't need to worry about it. It always does. Mm-hmm. Just keep showing up and just be where your feet are planted. And it's about the relationships, the connections you make along the way. It's all going to be okay.
It's great. Great stuff. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here with us.
100%.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode has inspired you on your path to success. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. See you soon on the Level Up Lifestyle Podcast.